lesson focuses on the IELTS listening question type sentence completion questions. Let's take a close look at these. So just to get you familiar with the question type a little bit, this is what they look like. Really, these are just short answer questions, except that each of the questions is a full sentence that you need to complete with your answer choice. Other types of short answer questions are just phrases or blanks that you need to fill in, but these are full sentences. Okay, so that's what makes these a separate question type from the others. Notice in the directions, we've got a word limit, just like all short answer questions on the IELTS. In this case, only 2 words, up to 2 words are allowed. So 1 or 2 words would be an acceptable answer length for these questions. Okay, we're going to look at these questions later and analyze them a little bit. Let's just first think about how to approach this question type. So the goal of this question, what you're supposed to do is to fill in a gap to a set of sentences that summarize key information from the passage. Sentence completion questions are most of the time about main ideas, key information. Okay, so these will not be usually very small details that you have to listen for, but rather very important ideas from the passage that you're listening to. Okay, so that's something you can expect out of this question type, is that this will be key information from the speakers. Okay, now when in the time before you listen to the passage, when you're analyzing the question and trying to predict what types of information you'll need to fill in your answers. First of all, it's of course important to take a close look at the word limit, okay, and look at the directions. That's just a basic strategy for all short answer question types. But also very important for this question type is to use the sentence information that's provided to you in order to fill in the blank. Because they give you a full sentence for this question type, you have a lot of information to help you answer the questions. There's a lot of contextual clues in the sentences themselves that should give you information about what to listen for. Okay, so for example, in this sample quotation there, the professor said he would not allow what? Okay, well, we know that the professor is not going to allow something, okay? So we get some grammatical information there. We know that this is going to probably be a noun that we need to fill in that blank with, okay? And this is going to be something that is prohibited by the professor, okay? Something that's not allowed. All of the vocabulary words there give us information about keywords to listen for from the passage. So that is very useful stuff for you as you're trying to predict what information to listen for. We will get a chance to practice this in just a moment after we analyze the sample questions just a little bit. Okay, the last point here is that any information you fill in to complete these sentences for the sentence completion questions you have needs to be grammatically correct. Okay, so you need to make sure whatever your answer choice is, that it fits grammatically, that you use a proper verb tense, okay, that you have subject-verb agreement, right? If it's a third person's present tense noun, it needs to have that S on the end, for example, or perhaps an ing, or whatever form is going to work grammatically for that particular question. So pay attention to grammar and make sure that the answer choice you supply fits grammatically with the rest of the sentence you're putting it into. Okay, now let's take a close look at the sample question we saw at the beginning of this lesson to think about how to analyze it before the listening passage begins, before the speaker starts speaking, right? In your 30-second time that you have to sort of take a look and try to make some predictions about what to listen for. So first of all, keywords. So as we said at the beginning, there is a lot of information in these sentence completion questions that you can use to help you listen. So keywords to questions 1 through 3 here. Well, in the first one, James could not finish his paper on time due to what? All right, so we need to listen for question 1, basically the reason why James couldn't finish. Okay, so those words underlined are the keys to answering question 1. Why couldn't James finish? And that's what you should underline for that first question there. Number 2. The professor offered James more time to finish and, okay, so what did the professor offer to James? That's what we need to know. We know the professor gave James more time, but what else did the professor offer to James? Okay, so we need to listen for those keywords in the passage as the speakers are speaking. What did the professor offer to James? Third one, James will ask for help from whom? Okay, we need to know who James will go to for help with whatever he's working on. Sounds like he's having trouble with a particular paper that he's working on, right? If we look at these questions, we get that information as well. And the professor's giving some advice. So James is going to go to someone else other than the professor to ask for help. And that's what we need to listen for to get the answer for question number 3. Okay, now we can also look for other kinds of clues other than keywords, looking to the questions, the blanks themselves to figure out what kind of information will fit there grammatically and logically, right? So here we have some clues that we can analyze. So number 1, James could not finish his paper on time due to what? Okay. What would make sense there? Well, probably a noun, okay, at least some type of reason why the paper could not be completed. Is it the weather, an emergency, okay, maybe a medical problem? We don't know, okay, but that kind of noun phrase is most likely going to fill in your answer for number 1. So that would be the type of thing to listen for and to supply in that blank to get a correct answer that grammatically fits with the rest of the sentence. Okay, number 2 then. The professor offered James more time to finish and, okay, I put parallel structure in the blank there. Parallel structure is a sort of grammatical rule related to conjunctions like and, something you could look up if you want to get more information about parallel structure or you forgot what that's about. Basically, the idea with parallel structure is that you need the same grammatical component on one side of a conjunction and on the other side of the conjunction, right? So if you put a verb on one side, there should be a verb on the other side of the conjunction as well. In this case, we could probably guess that the answer is going to be something like what we see on the left side of the conjunction and. So if we say the professor offered James more time to finish and to do something else would be a logical conclusion to this sentence, and it would make the conjunction have parallel structure on both sides, right? So that is a really excellent grammatical clue for number 2. Okay, number 3. This one's pretty clear. James will ask for help from, okay, from whom? Is it a person? Is it some office, like maybe the writing center at campus? We don't know. But we know that it's going to be some person or group of people like that that will fill in the answer logically and grammatically for this sentence. We're going to get a noun in that place. Okay, so those are some ideas about how to make your predictions before the speakers begin talking for this particular set of questions. Okay, let's do some practice now. So in a moment, I'm going to play a recording and you can have a chance to answer these sample questions that you see below. But first, let's walk through them together, thinking about how to do our analysis and prediction. So we know from the directions there, we've got a word limit of 2 words. So no more than 2 words to answer, to fill in these blanks. Look at question number 1. After the author's death. Okay, interesting information. We don't know yet. Are we going to hear information about this author from before his death? Okay, so is the death going to be a clue for you that the information is going to come? We don't know, but I would certainly underline this as a key word or phrase to give you a clue about what to listen for in the passage. It continues, reprinted versions of the short story text were blank by his family. Ooh, a really nice grammatical clue there. The verb were, then a blank, and then by his family. It would be very logical to assume that we are going to get a verb to fill in this blank, and it's going to be a passive voice construction, okay? What we need to probably listen for is, what did the family do to the text after the author died for these reprinted versions? They did something to these versions after the death of the author, but we don't know what, and we need to listen for that verb or that action. Okay, so passive voice is most likely what to expect, so you're going to need to put a verb in past form, past participle form here, which is going to conform to a passive voice construction. Okay, so that's a great grammar clue for number 1. How about number 2? Reprinted versions had the same storyline, but a different what? Okay, a different something. We've got an article, a, an adjective, different, and then we can guess that a noun is going to complete this phrase here at the end. So there's a grammatical clue. We just need to know what these different versions had. Okay, so they were basically the same story, right? They had the same basic events of the story, but something changed. And what is that something that we need to put as to complete this sentence? That's what we should listen for. All right, so with that, I'm going to let you try to fill in these blanks. So here is the passage where you can get the answers to questions 1 and 2.
Okay, I see. So you're looking for a specific version of this story then?
Yeah. You see, the original version was published in a magazine called Weird Tales in 1927. But not long after it was published, the author died. When it was reprinted 10 years later, the author's family revised the story with a few changes to the original text.
I see. Out of curiosity, did the changes affect the meaning of the story, or were they just simple corrections?
I'm not exactly sure. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying to track down the original text. I've read interviews with editors and publishers who have said that the editorial changes made by the family didn't actually affect the plot of the story, but they did change the writing style. See, I'm studying this particular author's writing style very closely, and because this is one of his early stories, I really need to know how major the changes were. So that's why I'm trying to find the unedited text from 1927.
Okay, so let's look at the answers here. Hopefully you got these. Number 1, after the author's death, reprinted versions of the short story text were blank. All right, the correct verbs would be revised or possibly changed would be correct answers for this question. That's what we get when the male student, okay, asking for help with this, says, when it was reprinted 10 years later, the author's family revised the story with a few changes. So we would need to, if you want to put changed as your answer, it would need to be changed. That answer would need to be changed from what the male student says, right? He said changes, but to make that word fit grammatically in the sentence, you'd have to change it to the form changed. Okay, so lots of changes discussed here. Anyway, those are your 2 answers. Now, you may have been tempted to put in the word reprinted. The family reprinted the story, but that doesn't make sense, of course, because the word reprinted is in the question itself. Reprinted versions of the story. We can't say that the family reprinted versions, right? That wouldn't make sense as an answer to this question. The only 2 that really work are revised or changed from this one. All right, now, as we guessed before we listened, the author's death was a good clue. It says, the student said, not long after it was published, the author died. Okay, so there's a paraphrase of the phrase we get at the beginning of our question, after the author's death. All right, so that was a good clue for you to answer this question. All right, number 1 is changed or revised. Number 2, reprinted versions had the same storyline, but a different what? Okay, and the answer is style, or writing style would be a good answer for this question. That's what we get when the male student said, I've read interviews with editors and publishers who said that the editorial changes made by the family didn't actually affect the plot of the story. Okay, the plot is a paraphrase, synonym for the word storyline that we see in the question. Okay, so there's a clue for you, a key word, but they did change the writing style. Okay, so basically you can just transfer that information, writing style or style, to the blank to complete this sentence where it's paraphrasing what the student said in green down below. All right, so those are sentence completion questions. Just to review a little bit, your goal for sentence completion questions is to fill in the gap to a set of sentences summarizing key information from the passage. You need to keep track of your word number, okay? So watch those restrictions, as always, with any short answer question. Then the key to this question type is to look for grammar clues, logical clues as well, to help you fill in those blanks logically with what is provided to you in the sentence that you need to complete, okay? And if you just remember that each of the sentences you complete needs to be grammatically correct. That's something they're testing you on. And you will get the question wrong if you supply an answer. Even if you got maybe the right word, you just put it in the wrong form. If it doesn't work grammatically in the sentence, you will get the question marked incorrect. Okay, so those are sentence completion questions for the listening paper.